Game on. Okay, so for those that don't know, I'm Cory. I've been writing software for a long while. I started writing code in the late 90s, back when JavaScript was just brutal, where I didn't really even know what was wrong. It would just say, sorry, it doesn't work. You couldn't really, the dev tools were horrendous. Life has gotten much more luxurious since then, especially as in JavaScript in particular. So I run my own consultancy. I train people in React in particular. I've specialized in React for the last 4 or 5 years. I also author courses on Pluralsight, so I have courses out there on C#, .NET, obviously a lot on React, on JavaScript, and then I also do software development for different companies. Right now I'm working with Discover, who you've probably heard of, working with some other local companies here in Kansas City. So my day is very unpredictable. Today I'm, doing a little bit of everything, talking with you guys, talking with a couple other potential clients, and hopefully riding my bike at some point. So let's go through the list. Best practices for using social media in technology. I have a particular take on this that is controversial. There's no right answer on how to use social media. I am very deliberate about the way I use social media. I think about myself like a magazine. When you pick up Sports Illustrated, you want to read Sports Illustrated because you're into football or baseball or basketball, and you don't care to read Sports Illustrated to hear their take on who you should vote for president or what religion you should choose or all these sorts of controversial topics because you chose them for sports. So when somebody chooses me on social media, they're choosing to follow somebody who's going to talk a lot about software development. Obviously, I specialize in React and JavaScript, but I'm very deliberate not to share my views on controversial topics because, frankly, I don't think anybody has a reason to care about that. I'm not sure why anyone would care more about my views on politics and religion than anyone else's, so I choose not to do so. Friends that get to know me closely, or if I'm at a conference, I'm happy to have conversations on those topics. I think it's healthy to dialogue on those things. I've just chosen not to make that part of my social media because it really is just a way to end up splitting your audience in half, because the people that really care strongly about those topics are going to say, I don't care what Cory says about technology because he doesn't happen to share views that I agree with on politics and religion. So I avoid those sorts of things deliberately. More broadly, though, I try to stay just on focus because I also recognize that just because you saw one of my courses or read one of my blog posts, that doesn't mean that you care what my kids are doing today. You don't care what I ate for lunch. Keep the signal to noise as high as you can. I feel like we all have this limited amount of time in our day, and that the more that you honor people's time in your social media by effectively thinking about their needs, the more that you're going to get followers on social media. So I think about the reasons that somebody would follow me is because they want to become better as a JavaScript developer, better as a web developer, better just generally as a software developer, better as a React developer. So all of those are either very specific niches or slightly larger ideas, but those are the people that I'm trying to serve. So I don't see, although Twitter has a self-serving aspect to it, because anytime you have people's attention, that's a massively valuable thing. I mean, when I publish a course and I can tweet that out on Twitter, I've got thousands of followers, so that's thousands of people that are likely to be interested in that, and they know about it. And that's having that permission is very valuable, and people will be more likely to see your tweet if they know that they usually pay attention to you because you tend to provide content that they care about. So I'm very deliberate about how I use social media. I also have chosen to go heavy on Twitter and pretty much ignore everything else, just because I've decided I'd rather go big on that one thing than try to spread myself thin in many different areas. I'll use a tool called Buffer sometimes that'll allow me to send tweets to both Twitter and over to LinkedIn, because you can send the same content to both. LinkedIn doesn't have the same length restrictions, but LinkedIn I found is a pretty good place to get a lot of people's feedback as well, back and forth. So that's buffer.com. It's free, works pretty well. I have decided to avoid Facebook just because Facebook is, at least to me, just it's hard for me to go in there without getting sucked into all the history of, I guess it's hard to keep it business oriented. And maybe that's just a statement about who my friends are on Facebook because of the history of Facebook. So for me, it's, oh, there's a bunch of friends from high school and here's relatives. And it's just with Twitter, I started out saying this is about software for me and my persona is going to be about software. And I think that's why my follower count grew pretty organically, because people knew why they would follow me in the first place. So my summary is to think about yourself as a magazine. Now, that said, there are very smart people who I respect, like Scott Hanselman, who have the polar opposite view and will say things like, you follow the whole person. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. Scott has a lot more followers than me, so clearly what he's doing is working. But I would say this. Part of the reason that it's working is because he works for Microsoft and is at a level of celebrity that he can get away with tweeting about anything in the world, and people will still follow him because he's Scott Hanselman. I'm not Scott Hanselman, so I think if I did some of the things that he does, people would say, I don't care. You're not at his level. I mean, you think about Robert Downey Jr. is a celebrity, and he can say just about anything, and he's going to get thousands of likes because he's Robert Downey Jr. So until you're there, I would encourage yourself to say, how can I be really remarkable in a very small area and make a small group of people that care about this thing really excited to follow me? That's what gives you power. So that's answer one. Number two, how has speaking at conferences helped your career? Would you recommend it? Oh, and by the way, if you have questions, I can see everybody, so you can raise your hand. If you want to interrupt wherever, have at it. Speaking at conferences wildly helped my career because, for starters, back way up. I mean, it was a few years back that, I think it was 7 or 8 years ago, I was struggling with just general social anxiety. Like the thought of going to a room and speaking to a group of people was terrifying to me. And I remembered sitting around like reading books on shyness and reading books on public speaking, like trying to figure out, did I want to be somebody who was more or less hiding and working through this issue that I was dealing with, or did I want to be somebody who sort of ran toward my fear? And that idea of running toward your fear was something that really resonated with me. Like, what is the craziest thing that I could do that would be the polar opposite of how I'm feeling? And I thought, okay, that really is speaking in front of a room. That was the thing that really sounded crazy to me. So I did it, and the funny thing was it went well, and it didn't just go well. Like, I got up there, and just the feeling of being up there and conquering my fear, I thought, even if this doesn't go that well, I'm doing the thing that I've said, at least in my head, is crazy. And by doing that, it was freeing. And that also changed the way that I thought about myself, because now, if I'm somebody who can speak in public, maybe I am better socially than I think I am. And that helped to create sort of a flywheel effect that has really improved my communication skills. There's also something that happens. Like, if you speak to a group of developers at a conference, you've got 50 people, 100 people in the room, you recognize that's a very stressful situation, because anybody in that room could correct you at any time and say, actually, that's not true. And at first that was really scary, but I came to realize, when people do that, they're helping me get better. And also, if I get comfortable with that particular scenario, talking to a manager or talking to a group of vice presidents or executives at a job is a lot less stressful than that. Because the peak of stress to me is I'm standing in front of a group of developers that may point out that I'm wrong on something. And getting used to that has basically set a different bar for my stress level now. So doing things like this is completely natural to me. Like, this feels normal because I've presented literally hundreds of sessions at this point. So it's kind of like shooting 3-pointers. I mean, at some point it just becomes completely natural. It's not stressful. It's just you. It becomes a part of you. So, I mean, as far as other benefits of this, the moment I started speaking, job offers got better because people see speakers, I think unjustifiably, people see speakers as leaders. Anybody can be a speaker. I mean, the thing that blew my mind was I submitted to a conference, and the first try, somebody said, yeah, you're in. Now, given it was a free conference, it was small, it was nothing prestigious or special, but I was in, and I thought, I expected there to be some big gatekeeper and it to be really difficult to get in, but for me, it worked. And now, that said, still to this day, I've been speaking for years and I still get rejected quite often, but I don't take it personally because I recognize there's not enough slots for everybody. So you're going to get rejected sometimes, and sometimes you'll get accepted. Maybe it's about your abstract. Maybe it's about exactly what they're looking for isn't what you're offering. I would say, as a side note, send your abstract to someone else who is a speaker, because speakers over time tend to get really good at writing abstracts because they start to recognize exactly what those conferences are looking for. So that goes a long way. Speaking at conferences is also really valuable because if you submit and get accepted for a topic, it's going to motivate you to go really deep on that topic, because getting up in front of people and teaching, you do not want to get up there and flail. Like for me, it's fear-driven development. I'm going, okay, I'm going to do everything I can to know this thing to the point that I feel like I can stand in front of a room and not embarrass myself. So that means I've really got to learn it. I don't want to get up there and look like I wasn't prepared. Now, that said, there are plenty of times that I say, I don't know. I don't know is far preferable to lying and pretending, because there will be a group in the room that goes, that was not just the wrong answer. He's pretending that he knows it, and he knows he doesn't know it. I can see through the fact that he's lying. He really doesn't know the answer, and he should just say, sorry, I don't know. This applies in interviews too. I've never said no to somebody just because they said, I don't know. I say no to the people that give me BS, give me a fake answer. Those are people that I don't want to hire. Be honest about what you don't know. What I'm looking for is somebody that's excited to get better. And that's pretty easy to read as you have a conversation, especially if you can be concrete about how you want to grow. Okay. It's 9:14. How much time were we planning on this?
I think we had it blocked out until 9:30.
9:30. Okay. I will adjust my answer length accordingly. So, how do you keep up with current trends and advances in this field? My number one resource is subscribing to emails. Oh, I'm sorry. There's a hand back there.
I'll ask after you answer this one.
Okay. Okay. Uh, my number one resource is subscribing to emails about the topics that I care about. So I'm subscribed to 2 or 3 JavaScript newsletters. I'm subscribed to 3 or 4 React newsletters. Those give me a good signal to noise ratio. I find I want to read about 30% of what's in there, which is a pretty good number. The stuff that I don't want to read, usually I'm already familiar enough with that I skip past it. The other way that I keep up is by following people on Twitter. I'm very deliberate about who I follow. Now, given I follow over 500 people, but I follow 500 really good people. If I don't feel strongly about someone and their content, then I don't follow them. So if you go look at who I follow, if you happen to be somebody interested in JavaScript and React, you'll probably want to follow some of those same people. One good way to find people to follow is think about, okay, who is the most noteworthy person in the technology? And once you go look at that person, go say, all right, who are they following on Twitter? Now, given that's assuming that they're following at all. Maybe they aren't on Twitter at all, then you'll have to have a conversation with them about how they keep up. But Twitter seems to be a really valuable resource to me. The other way that I keep up is at conferences. Given going to conference sessions gives you a lot of knowledge, but also hanging out in the hallway is super valuable. Having conversations with fellow devs, also at lunch, trying to sit with people who you don't know. When you sit with people that you don't know, you have that opportunity to have a conversation that you can't predict, to hopefully run into people that are working in similar technologies to you, but hear how they work differently. Some conferences that I really like even have tables that are based on topics. So you could go to a conference and say, oh, here's the Angular table, here's the React table, here's the Node table, here's the Docker table. So you can sit down and go, okay, here's people that work at all these different companies, and I can pick their brains on anything. Like, that is super valuable. I've ended up staying at lunches like that for 2 or 3 hours afterwards and skipping all the sessions in the afternoon, because my word, it's like a personal consulting session with a bunch of people that are doing something similar to you, and you can learn so much from each other in a short time. Also, setting up a meetup. I don't know if Omaha has a good meetup for the technology you're working in, but if they don't, you place yourself as a leader by going out to meetup, setting up that meetup, coordinating when it happens. That also gives you quite a halo effect and allows you to meet a lot of new people. Okay, so let's do your question.
When you first got started, what was the easiest, when you first got started, I guess, on your own, making your own consultancy, what did you find the easiest way to get new clients was?
The easiest way to get new clients is to become somebody that they want. That that sounds like a lot of hand waving,
So
but
I dumped myself with pheromones then?
so Maybe I should be more specific. The good way to find clients is to make yourself one of the first people that comes to mind on that topic. And that is not easy because what I just described is years of work. To give you guys a little background, I just went independent for the first time in my career a week and a half ago. So you're talking to a new independent. Now, I say that, but I have had my own LLC in Kansas for years. I have done consulting on the side, training on the side. I've authored Pluralsight courses while I had a full-time job. So you can get a sense of the amount of sacrifice that I've had to make because I was working 40 hours a week and then nights and weekends I've built this business. So I was able to quit my job last week because I make a lot more money on the side than I did at my full-time job. But that took years and years to get there, to build and spin that flywheel. That takes building a reputation. It takes building a knowledge base. It takes building a marketing structure, having a good following on Twitter, having good SEO on my website so that people find me when they type in React training or React consulting or React development, those sorts of things. So that also is a matter of blogging regularly, tweeting regularly, being in people's minds, going to conferences like that. That's why I say, you've maybe heard this before, that people say that opportunity is often masked as hard work dressed in overalls. I think I butchered that quote, but you get the idea that really opportunity comes down to just putting in a fair amount of work every day. Okay, so what are some tips for junior devs trying to find jobs? Go to a meetup, go to a conference. When you do, meet a lot of people. When you find people working in the technology that you're interested in, introduce yourself as an ex-developer. Say that you already know it. If you've went to this class and you've learned it, congratulations, you know it. Don't sell yourself short. Don't say, I'm trying to learn Angular or I'm interested in. If you've built something with it, even if that something is simple, you are now an X developer. Insert X here. I'm a firm believer that you need to speak with confidence because people will have no more confidence in you than the way that you present yourself. Now, I'm not suggesting that you lie. If you don't know it, don't say you know it. But more often than not, I get people in interviews who describe themselves as juniors who are not juniors, who are farther ahead than that when I look at what they know and what they're capable of. So I totally recognize this too, because early on I was scared too because I didn't have a good sense of how much I knew relative to my peers. A good way to remove the ambiguity here and set yourself apart is to create a GitHub account and put at least one project out there in the technology where you would like to work. This puts you above the vast majority of people that are interviewing. And if I have two equal candidates and one of them has a GitHub account with code that I can look at that runs, even if that code isn't great, they are preferable to me because they're a known quantity and they went above and beyond. They showed that they were willing to give me something concrete to work on rather than just a conversation, and they were willing to do something that other people probably wouldn't put in the time to do. This may even mean that you take something that you did in your sessions here and you tweak it a little bit and make it your own, which is also a good way to go deeper anyway. So that's a great way to get a job. Also, I mean, most of the good jobs come from conversations with others, come from those sort of just lucky happenstance where you talk to the right person. And that's why I say you have to think about how can I increase my luck surface area? And your luck surface area is directly proportional to the number of people that know what you're good at and what you care about. So that's why I say going to conferences, blogging, tweeting, meetups, being involved, and having a lot of people at least know what you do is going to increase the number of opportunities you have for sure. What is one thing that you wish you would have known before taking your first job in technology? You don't have to know it all. You what you need to do is have a general comfort level with the technology, but there's absolutely nothing wrong with learning on the job, because everybody is learning on the job, because nobody knows everything that they should. This becomes increasingly obvious as I work longer. I mean, so I've been writing software professionally for about 2 decades now, and I'm still embarrassed about how often I go, I should know that, but you know what? It's not like I read this book that starts here and ends here and everything landed in my brain. What tends to happen is we read a blog post, we hear a tweet, we write some software, we go read a few more blog posts, we might read a short book that covered part of it, half of it falls out of our heads. A few years later, we shift to a new technology. All of us are this bizarre patchwork of knowledge. And most of what is valuable as a software developer is being able to answer those questions by hunting them down. So getting good at Google, getting good at typing the right things into Stack Overflow, getting good also at knowing who to ask. So one of my greatest advantages today is having people that follow me on Twitter for React and JavaScript means the times when I have really hard problems, you can go back in my tweet history and you will see me at times going, okay, I'm stumped, everybody. Here's what's going on. Can anybody tell me what's wrong? And I kid you not, usually in less than 5 minutes, I have multiple correct answers. Sometimes 2 different ways to do the same thing. Like, can you imagine how valuable that is to have people answering that quickly? So that is most certainly the benefit of building a very specific following, because the people that follow me for very certain reasons, since I'm deliberately very focused in my tweets as well. So that social media aspect I have found has given me a really luxurious development experience. I mean, thankfully, as I've been coding longer, I don't get stuck as often. But boy, when I do, I'm getting stuck on really hard problems that if I posted it on Stack Overflow, I might be waiting a long while. I don't know whether I'd get a quick answer. So having other smart people. The other thing is, this is a side note, but Cunningham's law says that the best way to get the right answer on the internet is to post the wrong answer. So fairly often, what I will do is blog, and I will say, here's what I'm doing today. I really like it. This seems to work. And then 2 or 3 people will post back and say, you're doing it the hard way. Do it this way instead. And that is a massive win. That doesn't hurt my ego. I go, oh, wonderful. Okay, well, thank you. I had a hunch that maybe there were better ways, but I didn't post the blog post as question, hey, everybody, how do you do this? I posted as, here's what I'm doing now in X. Give it a compelling title, describe it all, and you will attract anybody that's working in that area. And the smart people that read your blog post will make you even smarter. So that's super valuable to actually risk posting the wrong answer, but at least start with the point of showing you put in the thought, you put in the work to move things forward. Have you ever struggled with imposter syndrome, and how do you handle those times? I think everybody struggles with that. If you're really honest. Now, that said, I have gotten to the point that I don't struggle anymore in my area of expertise. And when I say area of expertise, I know that my JavaScript knowledge needs to be better. I know that working in React, that there's stuff in React that I need to get better at in an ecosystem that's constantly moving. So even the things that I feel like I'm best at after spending all these years, I still know that I need to get better, but that doesn't mean that I have imposter syndrome. That means that I have a reality of humility. So I think imposter syndrome for some people is something that holds them back, because there's this feeling of, I can't do this until I've cleared some kind of imaginary bar of being good enough. And the question is, where is that bar? And people tend to set that bar too high. And that's why I was saying earlier, to avoid describing yourself as somebody who's learning X, and instead describe yourself as X developer. So I very quickly said, I am a React developer, even though early on I wasn't a very good one. I needed to get there, but I had built a React app. It was a simple app, didn't have much to it, but I understood the basics and I could describe myself as that. And then anybody having a more nuanced conversation with me could decide for themselves whether I was junior or mid or senior. And we're all on this continuum here. So I think the way that you think about yourself has a big piece. If I were to describe a single book that was most helpful on this whole imposter syndrome area, is the book Mindset by Carol Dweck. The book Mindset talks about the value of having a growth mindset versus a fixed mindset. And for the longest time, the reason that I think I struggled socially, and in particular thinking about speaking, was having a fixed mindset of saying, I'm just not good in front of a crowd. I don't know how to be engaging. I don't know how to keep my cool. People can tell that I'm stressed out. And reading that book is a reminder that with a growth mindset, you recognize that the people that have gotten really good at anything were all born babies with no inherent skills at that topic. And as a baby, they grew up, and as a child, they started to practice and they put in the work. Now, there is an element of inherent talent that can't be ignored in some areas. But when it comes to communication skills, if you can speak, and if you can hear people, and if you can feed off of their feedback, you have every opportunity to get better. And I've been guilty of this times before there where I'd say, well, I'm just not funny. Well, you can read a book on being funny, and you start to realize that comedians have a certain structure to the way that they tell jokes. Like being able to harken back to a previous thing that I said earlier makes it inherently funnier, because then you go, oh, it's almost like an inside joke with us. Like if I make a joke right now about something I said at the beginning of this session, it will inherently be funny because now it's like our little in group laughing together about that thing that I mentioned earlier. So it's formulaic to a degree. And once you learn those formulas, you get better at those very things. Hey, it's 9:30 on the money, and that was the last question. So I'll turn it over to whoever wants to. If there's more questions, I'm happy to answer more.
I'll go ahead. Did you have any large obstacles that you encountered on your journey, and was there like a certain way that you got over those obstacles?
I certainly did. I think probably the biggest obstacle that I had was struggling over what to go big on, because there's an infinite amount out there to learn, and it's very difficult to decide how to spend your free time and what to learn and what to ignore, especially in a world where there's so much free information out there. So one thing that helped me out, and I think had a massive impact on my career, was deciding to specialize, because it took a lot of weight off my shoulders. I no longer felt like I had to be amazing at everything. I just wanted to be quite good at one particular thing. And early on, I don't actually recommend that as a career approach. I think at the beginning, as somebody that's just coming out of school, it's really helpful to dabble in a lot of different things and look for the thing that resonates with you. But I'll also say you have to be very careful about searching for your passion, whatever it may be, because software development for me was not a passion. In college, I was very mediocre. I was around a bunch of people who had been coding in high school, and I didn't. So I was clearly one of the worst in my class, and I thought maybe I should quit and go do something else, but I stuck it out. And what I found was, as I've gotten better at what I do, it's become more of my identity. It's become something that makes my life better. Like the fact that I'm a good software developer today means that my family and I can go to the beach on vacation because we can afford that. And that's awesome. So that's another reason that software is important to me, is because of the fringe benefits that I get from being good at it. I make enough money that we can go on vacation, which is wonderful. So, I bring this thing up about specialization in particular because the best book I read on this topic is a book called Essentialism. And it asks a very simple question. It says, stop asking yourself, how can I do it all? And start asking yourself, what do I want to go big on? And if you can answer that question of what do I want to go big on sooner rather than later, that is very valuable. And again, I'm not saying that you should do that at the beginning. At the beginning, I would say, try your hand working in the back end, working with databases, working with APIs. Try working in DevOps and interacting with Docker and cloud services. Try doing front-end development and getting your hands dirty in JavaScript and some other front-end framework. But look for this. Look for the spot that you feel like, you know what? This is interesting enough to me that I could see myself going deep. going deep enough that I could be exceptional in this area. And when you can find a spot where you could hit that fork in the road and say, okay, I'm going to go big on this, and I'm going to accept that that means I'm not going to be as good at all that other stuff that I can do, but I'm not going to make my specialty. That is a powerful place to be. And I look at other fields. Like you look today, a friend of mine is a surgeon. All he does all day is knee and hip replacements. That's it. So he's a doctor that went to school for extra years so that he could specialize in just that one thing. And if I was going to have my knee or my hip replaced, I would much rather go to him than to a general surgeon, because my friend does multiple knee and hip replacements every single day. He has seen it all because he's been doing that for years. And trust me, on the front end, when it comes to JavaScript and React, I have seen a lot because I have not spent my days spreading myself thin on all this other technology, because I'm just shipping front end code every day. So I see a lot of different circumstances there. I think that's the way the world is moving, is toward specialization, at least in software development, because again, with a river moving this quickly, it's unrealistic for generalists to keep up on lots of different streams of change. But if you can specialize in an area and set yourself apart in that area, then you have a lot of power, and people will think of you for that spot. Anyone else?
Well, I appreciate the time. This has actually been pretty awesome for everybody. I greatly appreciate it. I'm fairly positive all the students too as well. I know, like you said, you're very busy, and it's been awesome that you can actually take this time and help everybody out.
I'm happy to. Thank you guys all for listening. And if you think of anything else, hit me up on Twitter. I'm HouseCor on Twitter. That's HouseCor. So I understand, is the room full of Angular developers? Is that right?
Yes.
There we go. Very good. Yep, I spent a lot of time there too. That was right before React for me, but still very popular to this day.
Plug your courses, Cory.
Yeah, so if you go out to pluralsight.com, I have lots of courses out there. You can get a free trial for 14 days. If you just plug in your email and hit that. They occasionally do free weekends as well. I've got about 10 courses out there, and they're all over the map. I also, if you liked my career advice here at all, there's one out there called Becoming an Outlier that is all about building an exceptional career in software development. It's about 3 hours long, so it's my 2 cents on all of this. I'm somebody who reads a lot of books on career advice and on sort of life hacking in general. So I think a lot of those books helped color my thoughts in there. But anyway, if you wanted to go farther, that could be an interesting course for you in particular.
Good. My goal with guest speakers is always stack the deck. I've been telling them since week 1, Twitter's the place to go.
Yeah.
I'm super excited that you were able to share your experience with the class. Everyone in the class, go get on Twitter, go follow Cory. Look at who he follows. Those are the people you need to be following to get better at your craft. Thank you very much, Cory, for taking the time out to share with the class. I really appreciate it.
Sure thing.
Ride your bike over today.
Absolutely. Well, everybody have a great day. Thanks for listening. See ya.